Let's look at some real-life examples of integers. A thermometer is basically a number line, but instead of a horizontal number line, it's a vertical number line. And we look at thermometers and we see that thermometer has 0 on it. So here's my 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so I'm looking at this 0 right here. Okay, so remember that 0 degrees is going to divide my thermometer into two different types of numbers. I'm going to have my positive numbers up here, and I'm going to have my negative numbers below the 0. So a thermometer is going to show negative numbers as well as positive numbers. On this particular thermometer, we can see that the temperature appears to be about -2 degrees Fahrenheit. On this thermometer on the left, we see 0 is here, so we know we have temperatures above 0, and it looks like this temperature is around 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember that when you see a positive integer, you're not going to see a plus number in front of the number, okay? Just assume if there is no negative sign in front of a number, then assume that your number is always going to be a positive number. Here's another popular example of integers, and it has to do with sea level. So at 0 feet, we have sea level, okay? So that is the 0 on our vertical number line, okay? Remember, when we're looking at sea level and above sea level, we're looking at a vertical number line. So we can see down below Death Valley, below sea level, it goes to -282 feet. So that's very low. It's like a big hole in the ground, okay? So all of this is negative. Okay, it's all below sea level. Now then we see up above here, we see Mount McKinley, and we see that Mount McKinley is 20,320 feet above 0. So when you're looking at a picture like this, make sure that you note your numbers correctly. If someone asks you, what is the height of Death Valley? Make sure you put a negative in front of that to show someone that that's -282 feet or 282 feet below sea level. And on the other hand, Mount McKinley is 20,320 feet above sea level, and they actually do have a plus sign, but it's not necessary. But I'll put it here anyway. So 20,320 feet above sea level. So again, on this type of picture, we see that 0 divides our number line to above sea level. Anything above 0 is going to be above sea level, and anything below 0 is going to be below sea level. Okay, in addition to the two examples, we can also think about integers in other real-life examples. Can you think of any other integers in real-life examples? What about if I deposit money into my bank account? Well, that would show that I am depositing $12, so that would actually be a positive number, a positive 12. Let's say I need $15 because I'm going to go to the movies. Okay, that would actually be negative $15. So I'm adding $12 with my deposit, and then I'm going and taking out $15 to go to the movies. Okay, so that's one example. It's a very popular example of integers having to do with money. What about yards on a football field? Yards on a football field. Well, we can see that if we start, let's say we start here And let's say we have the 40-yard line and the 30-yard line. Here's the 50, the 40, and the 30. It's possible that we could start off at the 30-yard line and we could advance maybe 10 yards to the 40. Okay, so we would advance 10 starting off at the 30-yard line. But then maybe on the next play we're not so lucky and we lose 5 yards. So that would be a -5. Okay, so if I start with 30, you can see I gained yardage and got to 40, but wait a minute, I lost 5 yards, so that's going to mean I'm at the 35-yard line or somewhere about right here on my number line or on my football field. Let's look at non-examples of integers. Sometimes we're going to look at examples of integers. Sometimes I'm going to make sure that you understand what is not an integer or what is a non-example of an integer. We got to go back to our definition of integers and remember first that integers are whole numbers and their opposites, and they do include 0. So a whole number is an integer. If we have a fraction, that is not an integer. That is a non-example. If we have a decimal, 1.01, that is a non-example of an integer. Any fraction or any decimal. And remember, the fraction, if it simplifies to a whole number, like 8 divided by 2 or 8 over 2, and it can simplify to a whole number 4, then that is an integer. So this is an integer. Okay? So even if it's written as 8 over 2 on homework or quiz or test, you know that that simplifies to 4, and you know that that is an integer. Let's talk about a really famous non-example of an integer, and that would be pi. Pi is used in geometry, and that number really is a decimal, and it never ends. It's 3.14, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on for thousands of different digits, and it never ends. Okay? So we know that pi is not an integer because pi is a decimal. So 3.14 or pi is a non-example of an integer. So make sure that you understand that pi is not an integer.